Hey everybody, Neon here. I want to do a short video on the game Gods Unchained. This is a game that I did an article/video about back in roughly September, and I had some reasons to revisit it right now. Largely because, the game has gone into closed beta. There have been people who have requested me to revisit it because they felt that, for instance, my article and stuff were a little bit out of date or a little bit too harsh based on how things have gone over the last few months. And then especially I had actually had a chance to talk with the Ferguson brothers. These are the guys who are behind Fuel Games, the studio that manages Gods Unchained. So I had the chance to talk to them last week about my article, and I wanted to kind of talk about my impressions of the game now that we are in a very different spot than what we were when I initially made that article. So not quite enough information to, I think, put a whole article around, so I wanted to just do this into a short video to summarize my thoughts on things right now. One thing I do want to get out of the way, though, at the top, is that the Ferguson brothers did ask that I don't share all the information that they gave me. There's going to be some bits of it that I'm going to have to leave to be confidential, and then they're going to share when they have the opportunity to do so. So I'm going to have to share kind of my broad impressions about some of these things rather than go into specifics as to what the plans are, especially those that are in the future. But we can talk about the things that, for instance, are in the game currently, or that are public information currently. So when you go back to my article, you'll see that the main criticisms that I have for the game are, there's a few of them. One has to do with similarity of the cards to cards in Hearthstone. It's a very specific overlap there. Then we had a criticism generally about what is the game that's doing that's very different. What is it that blockchain is specifically adding to the fabric of the game? And then I had some bigger picture issues with balancing and monetization, etc. So those are kind of how I would structure it, and so I'm going to talk through all of those a little bit. The first one about cards that are specifically similar to Hearthstone cards, there's been a lot of progress on that. I don't know how much of it is a response to my article specifically, but there have been the cards that I highlighted as being problematically similar to Hearthstone cards have all been changed from what I've seen. I mean, obviously there's going to be some cards that are similar, or at least similar-ish, like you saw 1/1s for 2 of the draw card or whatever. Those are going to be similar because those exist in basically every card game. But there's very clearly some substantial upgrades and changes that have happened in that front. I mean, there's still a question in my mind as to why they did things in the way that they did, of having all these cards that were essentially Hearthstone copies that were in their card file. I don't really feel like I had a super satisfactory answer there, but I mean, here we are. So that's they've at least made those upgrades. The second thing is that I think that they have shown a little bit more about some mechanical differences that they're offering that are neat and substantially different than what I've seen in previous games. The gods that they have here, you have god powers that are associated with each of your gods, and you actually have a choice between which of the various god powers you are going to use in every game when you see what your opponent is playing in terms of their god that they're playing. So that does provide some interesting counterplay or interesting strategic gamesmanship there. I haven't actually played with it myself to know how does it play out and how does it feel in terms of does it really make the games feel different and how they play out? And then also there's part of me that's concerned about the long-term balancing of this mechanic, because it'll be, I think, a little bit different, a little bit difficult to make them either feel substantially different from one another, and all the different variations that are possible, while having them all be balanced at the same time, like all of them being viable. So we'll have to see how that plays out, but at the very least, they're offering something there in my mind that is very clearly different than what Hearthstone has to offer, and they kind of have to just show that when you implement it in its full force, that it's still a very interesting game mechanic. Next, I specifically wanted to talk about the idea of blockchain in the game. How does it make the game feel different and play different? I don't truly feel as if I've gotten a full answer as to what makes the cards themselves, when you're playing them in the game, how do I know this is a blockchain card? That's a question I have in my mind. I want to know when I'm playing a card, this is a blockchain card in some capacity, or that it's offering something to the game that makes it different. I mean, I don't know how, like, whether that's even possible to do. I mean, and I appreciate the fact that having more control over your digital assets is an interesting thing, especially for certain people. But there's still a concern in my mind that maybe it's worth making sure that something more substantial is being offered in that capacity, so that it's clear that it's not just this gimmick, but something that's very integral to the game that makes it play out different in some capacity. So that's one that's a little bit of a concern that I don't think has been fully answered, but that's not one of the main concerns, I don't think. Maybe that's just like a personal pet peeve of mine. And then finally, there are a couple areas that I really can't get into the details of. And that has to do with some of their plans around balancing and monetization. I think that what I'll say is this on a big picture thing, and talking to them about their plans and their ideas. They have some bold plans and vision of how they're going to approach these subjects. I think that it's very interesting of how they're going to do it. We'll have to see how they're able to, like, how successful they are implementing it. There's a lot there that it's hard for me to really calibrate as to what's necessary in terms of the manpower, in terms of the resources, in order to enable it. If they can get it all working well, it'll be really interesting and really cool and very different than what other games are doing. That's something that'll be very clear. So, like, the game will be very different in some important capacities to what you see in other games. But we have to just see whether they can pull it off. Is the long and the short of it, and that burden of proof. I think they really have a lot more to prove with this company. I mean, it's still small, so we'll have to kind of just see how things evolve over the course of the next weeks and months and years. So that's kind of like my big picture thing. I mean, like, that big picture take, which was true back in my original article / video, and it's still true now in my mind, where I've felt that they are really good at promising some big fat ideas, and I don't fully feel convinced yet that they can follow through on all of them. If they can, there's a lot of cool stuff that could be happening in the future, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. So with that, I think that I'll have to kind of leave things there. Unfortunately, can't get into all that nitty-gritty stuff, which I would love to talk with people, but I'm sure that the team at Fuel Games will have a chance to share that with people more publicly once it's a little bit more ready for release. But that'll do it for me today. If you didn't have a chance to check out that original article, it should be in the links below. And then beyond that, I would love it if you followed, subscribe to the channel, etc. There's also information about supporting me down below as well. Thank you so much, though, for joining me today. It was a lot of fun. Take care.